Good morning to you. It is not morning to me. It is currently night. It's around 11 o'clock, but it should be morning to you by the time you get this episode. It's been 3 months since I've done one of these, but I want to be clear. Please give me motivation to keep doing these. I know there are people who like it. This is a niche type of vibe. You know, not many people do this in the community, especially this is all audio. So this is why I want this to be on Monday mornings, whether you're commuting to work or you're already at work. Just listen to this and continue to grind and get that money, okay? Also, too, please check out the latest video I just put out. It's about why have slugging been like a consistent thing. It has a clown in a Christmas, outfit stepping on my Nia. Okay, check that out. Nia says hi. They hear you, all right, get back to work type shit. But anyway, please like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and tell me your thoughts down below. Now, I want to read something from the DBD Reddit called Dead by Daylight Rage. And the reason why I want to read this is because Reddit is really crazy. Especially when fans of the game get their own group. It's almost like no holds barred. I mean, sure, you still have a moderator and people who is like the gatekeeper in their groups. But when I tell you the things that I've read on here is way worse than what I've seen on Twitter. Even on Twitter is just as bad too. But it's literally called Dead by Daylight Rage. I'm a part of another one too. So it's crazy. But anyway, let's kind of get into this, right? So there's a guy named Meat Gardner. He says all the tunneling and camping they cry about. He's talking about obviously survivors. It's all on them and the game and the devs who give them literally every tool at their disposal to gen rush, force non-interaction, and completely waste killer players' time. That's why there's almost always more BP incentives. BP stands for blood point to play killer, because they both made the game shit for everyone that queues up on that side, especially if you are not running the top 4 or 5 killers or a quad slowdown meta perks. So he's talking about 4. They get the game that they complain for and need to effing deal with it. And my boy sounds very upset, obviously. I would think this is the killer main. Why? Because if I play killer, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not trying to prove anything. I might jump on just to meme around. Because again, I don't play killer. I do think that both sides don't play enough of the other side. I think that a lot of survivors don't play enough killer to really feel it. I've played enough killer to understand it, and it made me a better survivor. It made me understand the other side to it. So that's why I see things on both sides better. And then I think there's a lot of killer who just do not play survivor to understand that there are solo queue players such as myself with 8,000 hours, and I'm telling you, this game is not fun in solo queue. It's not. It's very stressful. Let's talk about it though. I think that but killers have to understand, especially that they're in the commanding role, to really raise their MMR more than survivors, right? Survivors can obviously be in a squad and they play with each other and they can win and achieve more games and stuff like that, and they have comms. But people, I don't know why they always think like generalities. It's not like a thing they don't understand. Like they keep trying to use their personal anecdotal experiences of what they go through in their matches to try to like use it as like a justification as to why survivors should not be, should get nerfed, or they shouldn't get this. For example, okay, he talks about that interactions, right? Killers use this a lot. They talk about why, do you guys gen rush? You guys gen rush and get the game over. Y'all don't interact and all this stuff. They added 10 seconds to a gen, I want to say almost 3 years ago, right? This was the part of the patch that was 6.1.0 patch. They added 10 seconds to a gen. In fact, that was the complete overall buff they did to killer. So I just want to be very clear. They literally buffed killer to the point where they overhauled nerf survivor, and now they added the BP incentive to play on both sides, because they knew how bad the game was about to be. They knew that people weren't going to play that game, but they needed to raise the killer's kill rates, because the killer still has to be in the commanding role. And I tell this to people all the time. The game is called Dead by Daylight. By the way, guys, I want to make these like 15, 20 minutes max. I know I sometimes do 40 minutes of these, but I think this is a healthy dosage, right? It's not too long for me. It's not too long for you. You probably don't mind listening to my voice. My voice is pretty smooth. You know what I mean? But But yeah, so they added that, the 10 seconds. So I think that they did a lot for Killer in that, because you got to understand, yes, they nerf, they rework perks, they do all of these things, right? That's a constant thing. But one thing they don't really rework and really change all that much at all was the less distance we get hit with after we get hit by a killer. So let's say I get hit, and a killer just hit me with a basic attack. Before 2-3 years ago, I just used to have like a longer distance, right? And killer took longer to wipe his blade, right? Now that's not a thing. They make it where we get less distance. Killer speeds up, I think, by 10% after their interaction. So they don't even like do their old interactions that they used to do. And the reason is because they want to make sure that they shorten the chase for killer. Does that make sense? So that's not a perk. That's just that's the base kit. That's what they do. And then Bloodlust, right? Bloodlust kicks in a lot faster, right? Now, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, isn't Bloodlust meant to end the chase more quickly? That's what they said. That's what the dev said, right? So if the point is to catch survivors, to down them, to increase the hook stages by putting them on a hook, how do you hook survivors? You have to chase them, and you have to do what? Catch them, down them, right? Whether you can down them with a basic attack or your full power, and then you put them on a hook. So that's what they've done with survivors. They mechanically destroyed how we actually move, right? And so then they actually mega buffed like all of these gen regression perks. Now, sure, we worked some of these, like now Pain Resonance, which is the #1 killer perk in the game. At least I think it stands currently still. They made it where now, like, I think each survivor only one time gets, pain res hooked. But now I think, I think before it was almost like they could always do it. They just had to go to a hook, and if they find that hook, it was pain res, and it blew up the gen and it regressed it. Killers still use corrupt intervention. Killers love complaining about, what survivors use meta, and they so tired of using the same thing. But if you go to the nightlight.gg website, it's like the Bible to me in DBD, because it's stats and fact. You literally can see meta perks for killer and survivor, and you'll see for killer, it's aura reading, gen slowdowns. Okay, Windows Opportunity is the #1 used perk in the game for survivors, right? See, again, this is not to bash killer. I just want killers to understand that when you guys complain about things, you don't sound that much different than survivor. It's just the survivor, a lot of time, they do a lot of stuff to hurt themselves in the game, and they hurt themselves from winning the game. That's what a lot of times survivors don't understand, is that they end up doing that to themselves. Where a lot of times, there's things that killers do, like, I don't know, you'll chase the survivor all game because you're trying to prove a point. Like, oh, wow, okay, you doing something really cheeky, and you're trying to catch me here, and you're trying to prove a point instead of focusing on, like, your possible 3-gen setup that's about to be broken. You see? I want people to understand, like, you guys have to start owning accountability. Like, that's the only way you really get better in this game. Okay? So somebody wrote in the on the Reddit post, did you raise your MMR by inflating it, or artificially inflating it by basically camping, tunneling, and stuff like that? And he probably did. I mean, a lot of the times killers do that. Like, they camp, they sit there, and I try to explain to people that, there's one guy commented on my post the other day on a video that I recently put out. He was talking about kill rates and win rates are different and stuff like that. And everybody's, I understand that killers have their own individual kill rates. Killers are different than it is survivor. Like, survivors are the same. All of them are the same. They may seem like they move differently, but they're all the same. But just killer, they have their own thing, their own abilities, and they also have their own kill rates. And the thing about with killers is that the win rate still for killer overall, though, generally, all right, in statistics, it shows that killers at least perform at 56% of the time that they win. Like, so at least 56%. Last time I checked, 50% is half. So that means you're not down, but you're not up. But then if you're 56%, that's slightly above half, or at least 6% above half. Okay, you're not losing your game. They're actually showing that overall you guys are averaging at least a 2K or better. That's what that is. And I'm not understanding how is that, like, complicated to understand. So even if you do have killers that's not that performing that well, but we're just saying in general, that's how it is. See, I want people to start to think with logic, but I would love these debates, but I don't see how I will ever lose because it wouldn't make sense. Because I just think that you either don't understand the game or you just hearing what you want to hear. And see, when someone's debating or arguing with emotion, like for example, the guy that just wrote on the post, these survivors are talking with him. I think it might be he might come from an emotional part because he's thinking about all the teabagging. He's thinking about him getting 4-man out. He's thinking about him losing a game. And granted, check this out. You have a lot of killers that can win the majority of their games. They can play 10 matches and and win 9 matches, but then the 10th match they lost. They could play 10 games. They won 9 of them, but the 10th game they lost. And they would literally say the game is survivor-sided based off what was possible. Right? But overall, did you lose most of your games? No. You won most of them. So I want people to understand, y'all got to stop doing this thing because y'all also do it in real life. It's not just like in DVD. Right? People always do that, it's possible. It's possible that I can win a bunch of it. Like right now, right? It's possible tonight off this podcast episode, right? I mean, I'm a very good survivor. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm not a full egg. I'm cracked. You know what I mean? Let me just, I don't know if y'all caught that, but I can possibly blow up and get a sponsorship tonight and get millions and 10 millions of views on this just podcast, just on this one. Get everybody and their grandmama subscribed to where I can leave my job. It's possible. But is it probable? Is it something that's going to likely happen? No, it's not probable. But is it possible? Sure. We can't live off that. So when you have some killers and survivors and they complain about this game, you guys go to the extremes. Y'all go to the extremes a lot. I got to stop going to the extremes. Okay? You got to stop going off the mentality of what could be or what should be. Let's go off what is. And when it comes to these Q&As, y'all got to start asking questions about the games too, man. Y'all got to start asking questions hey, the balance. Y'all ask about cosmetics a lot. They're gonna make cosmetics to for us to spend money because the devs definitely care about that. I think so much more than anything. But y'all gotta stop just asking start asking real legitimate questions. Okay, and let me just talk about I don't know if I touched on this, maybe I did, but the BP incentive. When they mega buff killer in that 6.1.0 patch, it was so bad that they wanted to make sure that they have an incentive. So, whichever side wasn't playing that other side, they're going to give you blood points. So that way, that way you have a reason to queue up the game. You got to think during that time as well, that's when they introduced, I want to say almost 3 years ago now, that's when they introduced the prestige reward system, or the prestige system, right? So survivors has so much reasoning to want to gain more blood points, not just wait to these events where we get these flan cakes and all of this stuff, and they have more of a reason to want to play the game now because hey, we can get to prestige 100, we can get to a high prestige. That was the race. I remember that back then. I still think I hold that. I was probably the first, if not the first, at least second, but I probably was the first in all solo queue. I don't know if that's a flex or not because it was 12 to 17 hours a day for 2 months. I wasn't even working, but I'm telling you, I got there and all solo queue. I don't know who's more crazier than me to grind solo queue to prestige. And you got to think, this wasn't when it was popular. When you saw it wasn't a lot of prestige to 100. It wasn't a lot of us around. I mean, hell, even being a prestige 34, 35 was considered oh my God. So imagine how many beatings I've taken on Hook and slugged out and tunneled just because, you got to prove a point. So again, they added these things, right? They added this stuff to make sure that people wanted to play the game. But you got to think. Now, this was interesting, right? Because before the 6.1.0 patch, when they overhauled, buff killer and nerf survivor, back then, MMR actually worked. They had a time where they did a testing. And they said, okay, let's actually, because MMR is not a thing like that in DBD, right? But they had it. And I'm telling you, I made a video, and I still have it on my channel. And it was called Killer's Appreciation. This was the time when I played Killer. This was the time where I wanted to learn how to see what Killer sees, the interactions. Like, oh, they know Killer saw all generators all red all the time. This is why they know where. Like, I didn't know these things, right? This is why I would always get caught off guard because I'm like, how did he see? Or you think you can hide behind a gem, but then they see a scratch mark. So it's like I had to play Killer to understand. And trust me when I tell you, this is the time. If anybody who knows who's been playing this game for a while, this was the time where a lot of killers stopped playing DBD. Like, this was the time where they stopped playing it. Okay? This was the time where they was like, you know what? I don't want to play this game anymore because I'm going against survivors who are actually on my level. Like, they got the same kind of hours. See, I can tell you now, I'm at low MMR, but I main solo queue. So if you ever listen to anybody that tells you that, oh, I'm at high MMR and you main solo queue, you're not. You're lying. It's fine, but you're lying. I'm not saying that you've never been at high MMR before. I'm not saying that you've never played with people who are good to be at high MMR. But if you main solo queue, you're not at high MMR because the way the former team lead dev Patrick said, hey, it's as simple as this. You either die or you escape. That's how your MMR goes. You either kill survivors, and despite the hook stages, they either all got out or they didn't. Okay, did 2 people get out and 2 people die? Okay, that's a tie. Did 3 people get out? Okay, you lost the game. Did 4 people die? Okay, you won the game. That's how it is. 3 people is dead and you won, whatever. But the point is, right, is that like back then, that's just how like MMR worked. And then not only that, like MMR can't work in this game as much too because it took so long for Killer to get a game. You got to think there was a lot of streamers during that time that just couldn't even get a game in because their MMR was so high and it was going against probably the same team, which was like Eternal, like the top team in the game, comp team these are not like survivors you want to go up against just thinking you finna just camp in tunnel because they're just gonna knock out gens. They're not gonna do something stupid like go over there and try to get everybody out. No, they know what the game is. Now, what a lot of times when people confuse is that they will talk about, speaking of comp, is that they will talk about, comp shows this, comp shows that the best, like the nurse player can lose against a very good team. That shows that you can beat her. But see, again, this goes back, right, to what's possible. We know what's possible, but is that in general? It's not. Most survivors aren't beating Trapper. Most you play solo queue and you think you finna escape a basement trapper, or think you're not finna run into a trapper and you ain't got comms and stuff like that. Y'all have to account for that. Y'all can't account for a team or a mode or which I respect the comp team. I respect what they do. I respect, like, I've learned a lot from watching their game styles and their gameplays, right? I think you should learn and always try to get better at Killer and Survivor from people who were better than you or you around the same level. There's nothing wrong with that. But, like, these people create their own win conditions. They create their own win conditions. So you can't just use that as, like, a thing and just think, like, oh, okay, well, it's possible, but hey, even though because with the comp scene, they count like hook stages and stuff, right? They count hook stages, they count escapes and stuff like that. They count it differently, right? You can't play certain killers with certain add-ons, and as Survivor, you can't bring brand new parts and certain things unless they allow it. But see, in general, in DBD, in the regular game mode, that's what the devs count. They count that. And they did say, I want to say like maybe a couple years ago when they came out with these stats, the highest Swift team didn't escape more than 48% of the time. So they still fell short under 50%, which means the killer was still on average beating the best Swift in the world. That's with comms, with all of those things. Okay? So I just want to read that post from Reddit. I just want to read that. I just think that people have to understand, like, there's a difference between possibility and probabilities. I think as Killer, there's nothing wrong with wanting to, play your style. Just like you say, hey, people shouldn't complain about camping and telling them I play how I want. Sure, okay, cool. But then eventually what's going to happen is that you're going to be matched with teammates and teams who have my kind of hours at 8,000. And I promise you, I don't care who you are. If you think, I don't care how many hours you have. If you are a killer, I don't care what killer you have. If you think that you can beat teams with really high hours into DBD, and you think it's not about mind gaming, it's not about, if you have no chase perks, if you think you're about to beat us and kill all 4 of us, by just standing in front of a hook, staring into a survivor's eyes, and you think we are not supposed to or not going to escape and give you a one-man out? You must be crazy. You must be out of your mind. And you cannot guard me. Check out the merch in the store tab. Appreciate you guys listening and stuff like that. Hope you guys have a good day at work. I try to do this every Monday. And I'll upload a video twice a month. And then I'll probably live stream like almost every other day or so. And then, clips and stuff like that. But if nothing else, have a blessed day. Happy New Year's to you. And nothing else. Peace.